everybody. My name is Victoria Nkatha from Responding to Life, and today is Wisdom Wednesday. So, here's your word for the day. Now, today's word of the day is inspired by a word that says there are only two options out of life. You either make progress or you make excuses. Now, this goes very well into what we will discuss on today's show, so tune in. But in terms of making progress and making excuses, nobody ever came out of life successfully by making excuses, and this resonates a lot with what I'm going through currently. It's either I stop working and I decide that I want to make excuses for what is happening in my life and why things are not working, or I choose to look for options in terms of how I can be able to move around my problems and make progress in all aspects of my life. So if you want to be able to get successful and get ahead, keep making progress. Excuses never saved anyone. With that said, see you tonight. Have a good day.
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. My name is Victoria Nkatha, and we are here on Wisdom Wednesday. Now, I am so happy and excited to be talking about what we're going to talk about today. But before then, do share the stream, do share the live, tell a friend to tell a friend that they should join in and let them bring themselves in and we enjoy today's show. Now, today I will be doing this show solo, or will I? Hmm, interesting. So, and good to leave you guessing. So, stay tuned so that you can find out whether I have a surprise for you or not. But we're about to start an amazing show, and we will be discussing the 7 stages of personal maturity or growth. So tell a friend to tell a friend because this is something I love talking about. However, today we're going to divide the session in 30 minutes bits. So the first 30 minutes, what I'll be discussing about is more about self-awareness and how we actually get into growing in terms of maturity and self-growth. And then the last 30 minutes, we'll be discussing these 7 stages comprehensively. So instead of using the whole hour, we also want to understand how do we get to these stages? Because if we do not know ourselves enough, we cannot even know where we are at or gauge where we are at. So with that said, we're going to start out, and we're going to start out with the Johari window of knowing yourself. So this is leading us to stepping away from not knowing yourself and your unaware slavery. And all this, I think, the courses that I've been doing and then becoming a mental health practitioner. But this is what I'll be sharing with you today. So the Johari window, think about a table with four areas, and then you have each area that is mathematics. So you have a table with four. So you have the first column is the known to self. The second column is unknown to self. The first row is known to others, and the second row is unknown to others. Right now thinking about it, I should have just done a table and come with it and shown you guys, but we're going to use our imagination here. So you have your arena. Your arena is what you know, known to self, and you see that little first square. This is your known to self and known to others. So you have this your arena. So this is what you and other people know. So this could be that, hey, my name is Victoria Nkatha. I am this and that. This is who I am, and this is what I stand for, right? This is something that I know, and this is something that a lot of people know. So this is my arena, my area. This is where I thrive. So you have the blind spots, which are known to you. This is now, we are still on the first row, but now we're on the second column. So we have the blind spot. This is the second square over there. We have the blind spots. This is what other people see, but you do not see. So it could be certain behavioral traits. And we're trying to make you understand now how to get to know yourself. Because a lot of us speak about self-awareness a lot, but we do not comprehensively explain how are you supposed to get to know yourself. So you have your arena, we've already spoken about that. Then you have your blind spot. Your blind spot is what other people know that you do not know. And this is very, very possible. Somebody might argue that, oh, no, I know everything about myself. No. But there's some things, even for me, for instance, my mom tells me And I'm like, hey, is that really me? Have you ever had someone tell you something about yourself and you realize it's actually true? It's actually very, very true. And this is where we now have to now start learning ourselves completely on a different level. Now, when we go down to the second row, we have now what is known to you and what is unknown to others, right? So the first side of the small of the bottom row, you have the your facade. Your facade now is where a lot of people live in. They live in a facade. This is the public persona. So this is what you know, or rather, this is what you've hidden with your public persona. So this is what you know, but other people do not know. So, and this is where a lot of people live by, or rather, live by hiding. We hide a lot in terms of, our facade. What we present to the public is not what we know that others, what others don't know. What we present is what others should see, but there's some things within us that we know that other people don't know. Now, there's the last point where it's complete unawareness, where you do not know and others do not know. And this is where we now start to dig within ourselves so that we can be able to find ourselves and become more self aware. So, unawareness is like slavery. And my lecturer said this a lot. Unawareness is like slavery. This is when you do not know who you are or understand why you behave in the way that you behave, why you have certain patterns, why you have certain habitual behaviors. And this is something that is very, very dangerous when you do not understand who you are at all. You do not, and there are a lot of people who live in this. And if we want to develop self control, we're going to go into details a little bit. We want to develop self regulation. We want to be how we want to know how to act. We want to know how to behave, how to conduct ourselves, how to be more effective in terms of how we move, in terms of what we do, and be more intentional. A word that I came to love, intentional. It's imperative. It's a very, very imperative that we grow in self awareness. Self awareness is key. And you need to understand where you are in these four areas. Are you in your arena? Are you living in what you are aware of yourself and people also are aware of you? Or do you have these blind spots where other people see but you do not see? Or are you living in a facade where you have this persona that is hiding who you truly are, but you present somebody else? Or are you living in complete unawareness, right? And as we grow and mature in life, what we actually want to do is live authentically, where we get to that arena zone where people can see who we truly are, and we can also live in who we truly are in authentic in authenticity. We live in our genuine self. We live in completeness. We're going to talk about completeness and transcendence. That is what some of the stages that we want to get to. We want to live and grow in congruence. We want to live and grow in realness. That realness of this is who I am. I have no facade. This is not me pretending to be someone else. This is not me hiding things about me. I am not living in unawareness. I am living in my true, authentic self. That is what we want to get to. And we're going to dive a lot deeper in this. So I hope you have a pen and a paper because it took me time to actually understand and comprehend these things. So, good evening, Responding to Life. Good evening, Yokabi. Thank you. And as you're joining, please let us know where you're joining from and let us go deeper into these things, right? Let us talk about it and let us figure it out. So the next thing we're going to deal with is developing social intelligence via maturity and character. So, one of the things that we can build, like I said, we need to be very, very aware of our habits, our behavior, so that we can be able to live our authentic self, right? We have to be in control. And how do we do this? How do we also develop social intelligence? Because as we grow in our authenticity, then this is what will also show out there. This is what will also be understood, and people will understand, okay, this is Victoria, this is who she is, this is how she comes out, and this is what she brings out. What you see is what you get, right? So going on, we can build new habits in our lives to generate better results. And one of the things that we want to discuss is how to build new habits. When I say building new habits, is not building new habits in terms of what you do to become to make more money or so on and so forth. It's what you do in terms of, getting to generate who you truly are. You have to set visions and goals that give you something to work towards. So who are you? What do you want in life? Who is your authentic self? Where do you thrive in? Who do you want to become? You can say that I want better mental health, but what exactly do you want and how do you intend to for that to happen? Self-awareness is not only about thinking that I want this, this is who I am, but do you have clear structure in terms of who you are, in terms of what you want to become, and a clear vision and plan and a goal in terms of this is what I want to achieve? These are things that mean a lot. A lot of us speak a lot about who we want to become, how great we want to be, but what we do not understand is greatness is, I mean, that's just greatness, right? But am I at the position where I'm living in my authentic self to be able to attain certain visions and goals? And what is greatness to me? Do I have each and every step that I need to take towards getting somewhere? There are a lot of people who say they want to live in completeness, but have you taken every step that needs to get to that completeness? And how do we get here? How do we grow in terms of developing this social intelligence via maturity and character? How do we become this and how do we mold ourselves to this? So we discussed self-awareness already. This is your emotional awareness. This is openness to growth. This is something that Nyokabi loves speaking about. Um, this is you knowing yourself and you also showing your true self. Now, one of the other things that I want to discuss is self regulation. Now, we're going into growing emotional maturity and character, right? And developing the social intelligence so that we can be able to know, okay, how are we, developing in terms of maturity? So, we are developing social intelligence, but then what are the steps in which we can be able to use these things that we're developing in terms of now getting to a positive the highest sorry getting to the highest level of maturity or personal growth, right? So you have self-regulation. This is authenticity. This is strength. You know your strength, you know your weaknesses, you know how you move, you know how, and you know when to say stop, you know when to say no. Something that I struggle a lot with, by the way. You know when to say stop. You know how to go back to yourself and realize that, hey, Bana, this right here I did, it was not right. This right here that I did is not okay. So you're growing in all these steps and you're also regulating yourself. You know when to say I am moving too far over here and I'm not moving enough over here. You know when to say that, hey, I am at the victimhood stage. We're going to look at all these stages. You can regulate yourself in terms of I am falling short over here. I am moving down a step in terms of my maturity. I am moving down a step in terms of who I am. Can I be able to go together? And self regulation and self awareness go hand in hand. You have your motives and drives. What are the outcomes of your self regulation? What are the outcomes of realizing who you are? What are the outcomes of understanding your person? And what is the passion for change? Who do you want to become and what is pushing you? What is your motive? What is your drive? Sorry, I am talking too much and forgetting to show you the notes. So what is pushing me? What is making me who I am? What is making me mature? What is making me thrive? And that's what we want to be able to go there to understand. Dissect all these three things, and then you now realize that you get to a point of social competence, right? You get to understand who you are in terms of the world and so on and so forth. You now develop competence and influence, social competence and influence. You now realize that in your regulation, in your awareness, in your motive and drives, you realize that you now start having clean language, for instance. You now start getting networking with people. You now start realizing who you are, then you know the kind of people that you want to keep around you. You start realizing that you become more influential. You're becoming, you're starting to be a leader in whatever sector that you're in. You're now realizing that there's a certain level of influence and competence, social competence, because you know who you are. Then that directly translates into the circle that you have around you, starts likening you more and more and more. You now realize that you start becoming relatable. You have relatability. People want to know from you, but you also start relating to things that are likened to you, or things that that you take interest in, right? And you start understanding that people are different. You start understanding, and having this whole thing set up is something that a lot of people do not have. I can tell you that it's something that a lot of people do not have. And with all this, then we realize that we're moving into a different area and a different zone. When we talk about the mind, we talk about how we think, we talk about who we are, right? We talk about um sorry, just before I go on, because I'm now shifting into another gear. Yokabi goes on and says authenticity is the hardest thing to achieve with self, especially taking into account how much peer pressure we undergo on a day to day. And that's very, very true. But one thing that helps authenticity is knowing who you are. You see, the thing about self awareness and self regulation is the fact that you can be able to take yourself back and understand that, hey, this right here, I was not my authentic self. I don't know if you've ever experienced, for me, I've ever experienced a situation where I am out somewhere and I'm now thinking that, hey, this is not my crowd, because I know who I am. I know the type of person that I am. I know who I want to be. I know where I'm going in life. I then realized that this is not my crowd. I'm not supposed to be here. I regulated myself to understanding that this is not for me. Therefore, I need to exit. I need to butt out. So, something about awareness, self awareness, and self regulation will always take you back to your authentic self, regardless of how much you might feel that you've fallen short, because you also create this bubble around you that can hold you accountable. And you also hold yourself accountable. Why? Because of the next point. The next point is creating this balanced thinking and developing a wise mind. People think wisdom is things that you read, what you do, and so on and so forth. But actually, a wise mind is having a balanced mind. And that is what now comes after regulating yourself and knowing this is what I want to be, this is who I want to go, and so on and so forth. You now realize that you're becoming more reflective and so on and so forth. But before I even start talking about the wise mind, I want to talk about how we develop a wise mind. So there are three parts of the mind, and I'm going to really try to. I'm going quickly because I can see that I need to also go into other things before we have to go into the 7 steps of personal growth. But the three parts of the mind, you have the emotional mind, and the emotional mind is where Nyokabi will tell you do not react to life, you should respond to life. Because the emotional mind is very unreasonable. And have you ever fallen in love and you try to tell somebody something and they cannot listen to you because they are acting out of emotions and they are heated, or an angry mind, somebody who's angry, they are just an emotional mind is reactive. An emotional mind is disconnected. An emotional mind is regressive. And sadly, we do need that emotional mind, but there are people who lean towards the emotional mind that they forget that there are other aspects, or other, maybe they don't know, but there are people who are more into the emotional mind than they are into the reasonable mind, right? And you see that the reasonable mind is intellectual. However, the reasonable mind is also disconnected. Have you ever had somebody be too reasonable for life? People who just think they are, and you can't tell them nothing. And for them, then Mr. Know It Alls. They are very informed, they're very focused, And too much of everything is poisonous. When you're also too reasonable, you now neglect your emotional aspect, or rather your emotional mind, and you realize now there's a whole disconnect. There's a whole disconnect because we need both sides. Now this is where the wise mind comes in. Finding a balance between your reasonable mind and your emotional mind, you then realize that you create a wise mind. And it's very, very hard to find that balance. When you are going through life, a wise mind is not the books that you read, it's not all that. Because when you start becoming too smart for your own good, you now realize you're becoming too reasonable. When you start becoming too emotional for your own good, you're becoming too emotional. But both aspects are needed to create a wise mind. A wise mind is reflective, and reflection is part of emotions, right? And it's also part of being reasonable. An emotional mind is contemplative. You constantly are in contemplative mode. You are contemplating situations, you're contemplating, you're thinking, you are also making rational decisions, and also making sure that you have your feelings in the right place, and you're contemplating, how do I act out of this. A wise mind is very self-aware in terms of knowing, this is me, this is my situation, and this is how I should behave. A wise mind is considerate. Now you see, a little bit of emotion, a little bit of reason, a little bit of emotion, a little bit of reason. You need to find that balance. You need to find that balance. Like a jigsaw, like, you have a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So you're considerate. You're considerate, even if somebody comes and tells you that this went wrong, you're not too disconnected with your emotions that you don't feel some type of way about, forgiveness and, those kind of things. But you're not too on the emotional aspect that you just let go of everything that could even cost you. You have a little bit of everything, a little bit of everything. A wise mind is growth centered. As someone who constantly knows, you see, a reasonable mind knows it all. A reasonable mind knows it all. They are very intellectual. They are very, they are, there. But a wise mind is ready to grow at all times. They know that, hey, I might be very reasonable. I might know a lot of things, but there's room for growth. There's room for growth. And you're not too emotional that you're just jammed up and you don't, and so on and so forth. So our mind is not the same as our brain. Remember that. This is not the brain that I'm discussing. This is the mind. Our brain is a physical organ of the body. However, the mind is the emotional and the human part of yourself, and it's the reasonable part of yourself. That is not your brain. That is not your brain, but it's all up here. It's all up here. All of it is up here. So before I quickly go on, I have 5 minutes to go on about this for you to understand now where we're going, because if we don't comprehensively explain why you need to be self aware so that you can be able to know the stage of which you are at in personal growth, then you will not know. You will not know how to even evaluate yourself. So, we've talked about the Johari window, we've talked about the mind, and how you need to bring all this into becoming self aware. And now we're going to go into Ulrich's levels of self awareness. Hey, today I feel so smart. What? Is psychology up in here? It's psychology up in here. So, because a lot of us only talk about self awareness in a very, very general manner, we also need to understand that there are levels in terms of self awareness. Ulrich Neisser's levels of self awareness. You have number one, and I'm going to go through this in the next 4 minutes so that we can quickly shift into the 7 stages of personal growth, because these are very, very important in terms of you understanding how to go on with life. Maturity, we'll talk about that in a few. So, in terms of self awareness, I need you to understand that all these aspects come in together to make you more self aware, and you need to understand how aware you are of them all so that you know how to be able to grow with yourself. Now, the ecological self, this is awareness of your internal and external stimuli. So, why is this important? Because you will not know what's affects you or what doesn't affect you, what pisses you off, what doesn't piss you off, what makes you grow and what doesn't make you grow. If you're not aware of your ecological self, you will not understand what goes on. You'll just be reacting anyhow. You'll be an emotional wreck where you're just jumping here and there. One, you need to be aware of what triggers me, what doesn't trigger me, what are my internal triggers, what are my external triggers, what are my stimuli, and so on and so forth. And therefore, when we understand this, then we also understand our circle of concern and our circle of control. This is where I learned from a young lady who used to talk about her ABCs and her AUCs, and I took that and I ran with it. I'm those people who think, and when I learn something, I will misuse it. So areas under control. This is your circle of control, and your ABCs are your areas beyond your control, which is your circle of concern. So for us, when we are in our ecological self, in terms of our self-awareness, we also get to understand our circle of concern and our circle of control. If you do not know the circle of concern and circle of control, let me tell you what will happen. Diana will be doing her business over there. She'll be watering her grass, and now you'll be affected by somebody else's grass. You'll be affected by somebody else's life. You'll be affected by somebody else's situation. And when things happen in life that you have no control over, because you're so concerned, you think that you mix up your circle of concern and your circle of control, you now end up reacting out of nonsense. Out of nonsense. So you need to understand your ecological self. Be aware of your circle of concern, circle of control, so that you know how to grow in maturity. Otherwise, you'll live in victimhood. I am mentioning this victimhood because it's very, very important. It's the first stage of personal maturity, and you will constantly live in victimhood. If you take control of your life, it is very important start by understanding the very first level of self-awareness, which is what are your circle, what are your concerns, what are your areas of control. These are your areas beyond your control and your areas under your control. Understand these things and make sure that you know what is your internal and external stimuli. What are your triggers? You need to understand these things. Make sure that you self-regulating yourself, criticize, or rather not criticize, you analyze and understand these things. Number two, the second level of self-awareness is your interpersonal self. This is how you interact with people. Do you talk anyhow? Do you behave anyhow? Do you insult people anyhow? Are you a person who cannot be approached? This is where you move from being aware of how things affect you, but now it's how we are when we interact with others. So basically, how am I affecting others? This is also something that's very important. Self-awareness is not only about you, it's also about how are you affecting others? How do people perceive you? How are others when how do others behave when they interact with me? Because how am I projecting myself? There are people who will tell you, I don't care, Suji, how you understand me is your own business. No, what I project out there is what somebody would come back and say, that one, no, that one, he's that. And that is where you need to understand, how am I projecting myself? And I love how one of my friends usually says that out of the abundance of the heart, this is how you'll speak, this is how you'll behave, this is how you carry yourself. Be aware of how you interact with other people. It's very, very important. You can't just say I don't care and it doesn't matter and so on and so forth. You can't do that. So the third thing, hey, we are running out of time. The third level of self-awareness is the extended self. So how aware of your past are you, and how aware of your future? We talked a little bit about where you want to go, but we also need to be aware of our past. Does it come and trigger you? You want to understand where your frustrations in life comes from. And a lot of us usually go to situations where we realize that we have undealt with trauma that we do not talk about, or rather, we do not think about, simply because we have not gone back to reflect on ourselves. We have not gone back to deal with ourselves, where we think, okay, maybe right here I have daddy issues. Yeah, maybe I have daddy issues. This is maybe why I behave the way I behave. Maybe I lived in a domestic violent home. This is probably why I have these frustrations. And you see, these are things that you need to be very, very aware of for you to be able to move in terms of maturity, in terms of growth, personal growth. You need to be aware of these things so that you know, hey, how can I be able to deal with this so that I can progress in terms of my maturity, right? Um, you want to understand how things have happened in your life so that you know how things are going to happen in the future and what makes you frustrated. What is this that makes you angry? Sometimes some people, once they hear just Papa, the name Papa, because they have daddy issues, oh, boom. So, so you just boom. Oh, sorry, I forgot again. In terms of the banners, this is the extended self we're talking about. Some people just boom, bomb blasts. They don't even take time to understand where they're coming from. I'm just gonna go through the comments real quick. Um, just to take a break as well. Nyokabi says the emotional mind. What's learning so much? Thank you very much, Nyokabi. Thomas says, God bless you, dear. Thank you very much, sir. Awakening the life within you. A wise mind is ready to learn nothing as powerful as the ability to know the importance of being able to learn something new. Why do I feel like that was a tongue twister? But yes, that's very, very true. Susan says, yes, Konga to what comes out of your mouth reflects who we are. Very much yes, very, very much yes. Now, after the extended self, you go to your private self. This is aware of your own thoughts. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? And what are you doing? Right? You, some people go through life in a very, very irresponsible way. We are always waiting for somebody to come in and guide you and hold your hand. A grown-up woman, you're waiting for somebody to come and save you. You're waiting for somebody to come and help you through life. You're waiting for somebody to come and coach you through life. But the thing is that profound personal growth happens in private. Your thoughts, your feelings, your motives, your work, your actions, when you are back in that little corner of yours at night, reflecting, you're learning what happened today. How can I make it better? Can I learn? Can I change? That is what your private self has a very huge influence in regard to how you're going to be and how you're going to move in life. And therefore, do not wait for somebody to come and tell you, oh, stop living like this, stop living like that. Some of us are really waiting for somebody better to be able to help us through. But at the end of the day, once that person comes, it might be too late. But you have to be the owner of your own life and realize that, hey, I need to self reflect. And you need to be aware of your thoughts. You need to be aware of your feelings. You need to be aware of your actions. That's just it. Be aware of your feelings, your actions, your thoughts. That's it. Now, the final one before we go to the 7 stages of personal maturity is the conceptual self. Now, the conceptual self is how aware of you, of how much aware you are. And I know this sounds mad, but how aware of you, of how aware you actually are. And this is basically what is your self identity? How accurate is your identity? How accurate is your personality? How aware of yourself are you aware of who you are? Are you having a healthy awareness of who you are? Are you having a healthy relationship with your identity? Are you having a healthy identity relationship with your personality? Do you like yourself? Do you hate yourself? Is your awareness leading you to more hate than love? That is what you also need to be aware. Your conceptual self, the way you think about yourself, how you view yourself, right? How aware of that conceptual self, how you conceptualize yourself are you? And that's the final stage. So with all this, it brings us down to now getting to the 7 stages of personal maturity. And you see, like in a Nainua, because we need to address some things. We need to address some things. The 7 stages of personal maturity, and I'm gonna might go a little bit over time, because this is now we've internalized a lot. We've gotten to self awareness, we've gotten to the wise mind, how you need to be wise. But all that was in preparation of now what is to come now here, the 7 stages of personal maturity. Let me tell you, I speak about this a lot. I speak about this a lot. I I speak about this a lot when I speak on so many things, because it also helped me transform my life, and not living in certain stages, and also aiming for higher. So the first step, the first step of the first stage of personal maturity is victimhood. Now let me tell you something. A lot of people live in victimhood. Why? Because people keep on blaming other people, other situations, keep on blaming society, you keep on blaming your parents, you keep on blaming your past, you keep on blaming everything else but yourself for how your life has gone. Let me tell you something. When we're in a place of victimhood, we are ready to take in disorders, that you constantly say that, hey, it's because of my trauma, it's because of my anxiety, it's because of this and that and that, that I'm not dismissing it. Let's be clear, I'm not dismissing it. But when you take these things, something else to blame for your life, that you now embody it, you accept it as the reason for what you are, instead of internalizing and saying that, hey, this is me, and we're going to go into that, you now become a person who's living in victimhood. If I constantly blame my parents for being some way, or if I constantly blame the government for not giving me situations where I can be able to thrive, if I constantly am blaming society for the way it's looking at me as a woman, as a man, as a this and that, I am living in victimhood, and nobody gets far with this attitude. You cannot get anywhere with constantly playing the victim, with constantly behaving like the victim. We get to a state where we're pitying ourselves in life, where you're constantly talking about, oh, I can't do this because, this and this happened to me when I was 2 years old, and so on and so forth. It's about time that you take ownership of these things and work with them so that you can progress in terms of maturity. We've talked about being self aware. Are you aware of the things that have happened, and what are you doing about them? Self awareness does not only state that you know what happened, but it also states that you are able to reflect, you're able to move into a positive state rather than staying in a negative state. Self-awareness is supposed to bring you to making better decisions in terms of the things that have happened to you, in terms of what has been going on in your life, so that you can be able to move forward. This is what self-awareness is for. Now, if you're living in the victimhood state, listen, my darling, there's hope. There's hope. You don't want to live in that state. You don't want to live your life blaming everyone else. You need to now go into taking responsibility for your life. It's not everybody else's fault. It is not everybody else's responsibility to take care of you. It is nobody's responsibility. You take care of you. And that brings us to number two, confliction. Now, when people now realize, when most of us realize that we've been living in victimhood, we now get into confliction. Why? Because we realize that we have been blaming so much of things to others that we have lost so much. What do I mean by this? You get to a point of anger, and this is anger within yourself, that you realize that, hey, I could have been so far with my life had I not lived my life blaming everybody else and everything else. You get to this point of conviction. This is where you're now having a tug of war with yourself. One part of you is saying, but it's true. This was the situation. You're pulled towards getting into victimhood again, and the other side is pulling you in towards growing. You're really angry with yourself. You are resentful. You've lost so much. You are now progressing. If you're in this stage, again, there's hope. There's hope, and I don't want you to go back into victimhood. I will explain to you what we're going to do next. Do not, in as much as you're angry with yourself, you're now realizing that you're getting to realize the things that have caused so much frustration in your life. You're getting to realize that anyway, by the way, it's nobody else's fault, it's mine. I failed to take control. I failed to become self aware. But here I am now. I'm in conflict. So I need to move forward. I need to move forward. This is my life. I'm the only one who can be able to make sure that it works well. I'm the only one who can be able to be responsible enough to say that I am doing this for me and not for anybody else. So we're just gonna quickly go into the comment section and then see what people are saying. Prince Mighty says, "Keep up, sister." Thank you very much, brother. And Awakening the Life Within You says, "Aki, victimhood. See, we like being a victim. Like things happen to us in our outer body experience. Yes, very much yes." Yokabi says, "Thank God for hope, Aki." Very much yes. Thank God for hope. Imani says, "I always remember that this is my life and um it is ending 1 second at a huh? And it is ending 1 second at a time. Yes, nobody's coming to save me. Exactly. Some of us are waiting for Prince Charming. Some of us are waiting for Cinderella. Some of us are waiting for Pastor Who. Some of us are waiting for Coach Who. But understand that you need to take action for your life. You can get to as many pastors as possible to come for you. You can get as many Cinderellas, as many Prince Charmings, as many coaches. I can speak from here to Timbuktu. But if you're not ready to get out of those zones of victimhood and now get into confliction and now move stages ahead, I can talk and talk and talk. I can speak. I can jump. I can, you know, until you decide to take full ownership. Now, which brings me to the next stage of self, of personal growth and maturity, ownership. Now, you've come from victimhood, you've gone into confliction, you're now conflicted. And because we do not want you to go to victimhood again, we now want you to say, "This is me." Taking full ownership for your life, taking full ownership for every single thing that you do. You're ready to take charge. You're tired of blaming people, you're tired of blaming others for the outcomes of your life. You're now becoming committed to your own growth. It's not other people who are offend me, but I'm responsible for how I react. I'm responsible for how I think. I'm responsible for my feelings. Remember what we talked about earlier on in terms of self awareness and all the other things that we've discussed. This is where you're utilizing it now. You're utilizing it in terms of now taking ownership. You are aware of the fact that, hey, I am Victoria. I am living my life. I know who I am. This is where I'm going. I'm now getting into this arena of changing myself. Somebody might be living, victimhood, you often live through a facade, right? We talked about this earlier on for those who missed the earlier session. We talked about this a little bit earlier, and if you can go back, you can watch it back. You can always watch it back. We talked about this earlier. Some people are living in that facade. You might think that somebody has it all together, but they really don't. But what we want to do is move you from complete unawareness, from the facade area, and move you into the self-aware area where you are living authentically. You're living authentically into your arena, and we're gonna get there. So we're now committed to our growth. It is not other people who offend me. It is I am making those decisions to know when to react, when to respond, when to do this. And this is hard. This is very hard. Ownership is also taking full responsibility for things that happen. When things happen and bad things happen, am I sorry? Am I taking ownership? Or am I constantly justifying my mistakes? Am I constantly justifying, this is life, da 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 da, da, we're blaming, because blaming others, being in victim mode is not necessarily only pointing fingers, but it's also, when something bad happens, you don't want to take ownership of it. You just want to justify it, right? And thinking that it's everybody else. It's the car that was bad. That's why it broke. And it's like, oh my god, So you are there and you don't want to take full ownership. You're not sorry for anything that you do in life, any mistake that you commit. And some of us even run and we point fingers at other people and we say, oh, this happened because of that. Some of us also spend a lot of time on this level because it's at this level that we make the toughest decision. We also make the best decision. And we get to a point where we have to completely change our mindset. Going from a person who's constantly pointing fingers to somebody who's now saying, you know what, I take full ownership. It's a lot of work. And don't ever look at yourself and think that you need to go through all these stages like this very fast. Take your time, but don't spend too much time on that stage that you forget that this is only stage three. This is only stage three. We are not there yet. Now, we have five other stages. We have five other stages. No, four other stages. So, after we've now learned how to take ownership, we now realize that we're now getting to a point of concern. Now, this is probably where I had stayed a lot, that it drew with me so much. This particular stage became overwhelming with me, that I have not been able to let go of it despite growing in other stages. So I overstayed in this stage. So compassion and servitude, a point of concern where it's no longer about me. It's no longer, and remember, these are stages of personal growth and maturity, right? So I'm no longer just caring about me because I've now realized that I am who I am. I'm taking ownership for my life. I am making these tough decisions and I'm changing my mindset. Now I am now getting compassionate towards others. We've gotten over ourselves. We've stopped being self consumed. We've stopped blaming everybody else. Sorry. We know who we are, but now we are now seeking to see what can I be able to extend to others and how can I be able to serve others and help others progress as well. Do you know there are people who never get to this stage? There's some people, and this is what I'm telling you, there's some people who are stuck in ownership, and there are people who are just stuck in ownership because human nature does tell us that we constantly are selfish to some degree and we only want what's for us, and that's just it. However, maturity also now goes into concern for others, being compassionate towards others, service to others. When we get there, we've not gotten over ourselves completely. We're now showing interest and compassion towards other people. There are people who are cold, very, very cold. There are people who don't care. They are very self-aware, they know themselves, but they can never show the slightest concern towards others. And it's an important part of growth. It's an important part of maturity. Very, very important. So, with that said, a lot of people do not understand that maturity is not how you speak, it's not about that. Da, da. It's a lot more. And we dig deeper and deeper into it. And growth is also, personal growth is a lot more work than you think. Now, once you've come from concern, you've now learned how to show compassion towards others, you now are open to collaboration. Now, a lot of us like doing things by ourselves. We say that, oh, I can do it. I am Miss Superpower, Mr. Superman, I am, macho person. But in collaboration, we accept the fact that we cannot do it all. We are imperfect and we can be able to use people's strengths to be able to complete our weaknesses or rather shadow our weaknesses. All of us are have strengths and weaknesses, and like I said, becoming self-aware is knowing yourself in totality. It's not just knowing yourself in terms of your strengths, it's also knowing what can I do and what can I do. There's a lot of value in collaborating with other people. A lot of us do not know how to help each other. We do not know how to collaborate. We do not know how to bring value to each other. I usually say this, and I learned this from a friend of mine, that you need three, you need to know how people are bringing value to your life. And if people are not bringing value to your life, then you need to re examine um, how who you are and how people are around you, and you need to know what value can I create to others and what value are they bringing to me, by analyzing also my relationships. Remember, we talked about being aware of the fact how you interact with other people, right? You see how all these things are color pouring in together, they're in sync. But you need to know how you're interacting with others, how you're going to help others. And this is especially in terms of your relationships, your romantic relationships. Some people go into relationships and they don't know what to do. You don't even realize that you have a part to play and a role to play in terms of bringing value, adding value into that relationship. Most people are there to take. Most people, even in organizations, you're at work and the only thing you're there to do is just take. You just want to do the bare minimum and you just want to take. You need to be able to understand that in your strengths, you can also collaborate with others. And when you collaborate with others, then you're able to bring better situations and stronger organizations, stronger relationships, stronger family bonds, even family bonds. You need to realize, hey, mom cannot do this here, dad cannot do this here. I maybe can be able to fill in that gap. How? This and that and that. We help each other. My sister is not being able to do this here. My brother cannot be able to do this here. What can I be able to do so that I can be able to fill that gap? What can they do to fill the gaps that I have in my life? And so on and so forth. Collaboration with people is very important, and realizing your weaknesses and analyzing people's strengths as well. Then you know, how can we be able to work together and how can we be able to build bigger. You need to also be committed to the process of growing. If you're with people and they're not aware of themselves or they do not understand this, it's either you help them do that or find people who are able to do that. I mean, in situations where it's people who you probably do not have bonds and ties with, you can easily go to a place where you now find other people who are more in tune with the fact that you want to grow, you want to become better. And we need to be aware of that and be focused on these things. Now, the good thing is that we only have 2 steps left, and I am right on time. Let's see if I'll be able to finish on time. Now, number 6, completeness. After we've dealt with ourselves, after we've dealt with others, we're now collaborating with other people. We are in completeness. And I'm sure you're wondering, number 7, what is number 7 if number 6 is completeness? You'll find out. Stay tuned, stay tuned. In completeness, you are now living in peace with yourself, in peace with others. You're living in unity with others. You're living in maturity and you're living in wisdom. Wisdom, why? Because you're able to make decisions for yourself that are aware of who you are. Other people can also see you live authentically. Other people, remember, this is what we discussed earlier. Other people can see that you are aware of yourself and you're living in congruence, you're living in totality, and you're living in who you are. It is only until we learn how to work with others that we can get to a state of completeness and a state of peace. If you're a person who cannot work with people, ha! You need to check yourself. People who are living in peace and unity with people are people who are able to not only self analyze but also analyze situations within themselves. Self-awareness is not only about me, myself, and I, and how I react and all that. It's also how we project. What we project is very, very important. And that means that if I project bile, people won't want to work with me, people won't want to live with me, and that's very, very important. Once you made peace with yourself, collaboratively working with people and living with them will not be a problem. And when you live with them, you get to a state of inner peace. There are people who have partners or families that they live with them, and every day. You cannot, because you haven't gotten to understand how am I. And this is the thing, even with relationships. I was having this conversation with a friend before I had the show, is the fact that you get to understand who you are, but then you also are very clear in terms of your boundaries. And oh, it was actually in your cabin. You're very you're very clear about your boundaries. You're very clear about what you want, very clear in terms of, but you will not be able to be clear about these things if you do not know. We're often stressed and anxious when we think about our flaws, our imperfections. We often invite chaos. So remember what I told you about victim blaming and, sorry, being a victim and so on and so forth. You constantly are living in this stress area that you constantly are thinking that you're imperfect and so on and so forth, that you now realize that even the things that you're attracting are not peaceful. They're very chaotic, very chaotic. That's not living in completeness. Completeness is you have self-regulated enough that you can be able to achieve peace and wisdom. And remember when you talked about the wise mind is a mind that can be able to bring a balance between the emotional mind and the reasonable mind. So as you are going on with life today, remember to get into that Zen mode, right? That's Zen mode. Now, with that said, I just want to get into the final stage because we've talked about completeness. But then you're probably wondering, Victoria, Sasa, we've already gotten complete. What next? As in, what is the seventh? There shouldn't be any other. Hmm. Ta-da! Transcendence. I don't know if you all have watched 100. Is this show on Netflix that you transcend when you now become liberated? You're free. You are transcendent. Let me tell you what is transcendence. Transcendence is free creative expression in everything that you do. This is the last part of maturity, and it's the hardest part to get to. When you are more pragmatic and useful in your life, you're completely liberated. You're completely liberated, and you're living in authenticity, as in real authenticity, as in that you do not have that slight thought of maybe I should not do this because this and that and that and that. You don't have those thoughts. You're living in your complete, authentic, genuine, integral self. All your values are showing. You do not have the slightest thought of, remember the Johari window? There's no facade at all, as in there's no facade, there's no unawareness, there are no blind spots. Everything that everyone knows about you is you. There's no area about you that people do not know, people know that you do not know. There's no area about you that you know that people do not know. There's no area about you that is unaware. You are living in your arena. This is what we're talking about. You're living in your arena. Who you are and who people know you are is in sync. That's it. Complete in sync. You are fully authentic. You are fully integral. Everything you say you are is what you do, is what you become. And that's it. You're genuine with yourself. You're genuine with people. You are living in wisdom. You have grown that perfect balance between your emotional mind and your reasonable mind. It's you've grown in authority that you can say, hey, this is me. I don't like this. I like this. You take it. That's it. You are constantly on the march for growth. You know how to live with people in the best way possible. You know how to live with people in the most useful way possible. You know that your legacy does not depend on fame and money, but you know that whatever value that I bring to this earth, it doesn't matter whether, excuse me, you're doing business, whether it's being a mother, whether it's being a father, whether you're doing music, whatever you're doing it with no restrictions, no limitations, or what ifs. Get that? There are no what ifs. So in this state, we stop taking life for granted. We make peace with the fact that time is the most important commodity you have, and you can die at any point, just as Imani said. We have no control over when we come to earth. We have no control over when we're living, and what matters is what we do with our time and the value that we create. What do you want to be remembered for? How do you want to be remembered that you lived this life? What is the essence of life? What is your purpose? You're living in your full purpose with no what ifs. There's no what if this happens, what if that happens. If you want to see, if you want see an opportunity, you're jumping at it, you're moving at it. There's no limitation whatsoever, and you're constantly in that mindset of growth, growth, growth. You're living in transcendence. And me, I can tell you for a fact I'm not living in transcendence. Like, don't even, whoever is going to tell me to do what, you're not living in transcendence. Kelvin says we should always acknowledge our role in the mess when things go south. Very much, yes. This is taking ownership. When you're living in transcendence, it's an amazing place to be, and this is where I want to be. Honestly, I want to live in my full authenticity. Ilenye, I don't have no facade whatsoever. I don't have any unaware areas. I don't have any blind spots. I am living in my arena. What you see is what you get, and that's just it. I am not having what ifs. I'm not have second doubts. I'm not constantly in an anxious mode. I am just living, and I understand what comes with life. I understand that my time here on earth is the most valuable commodity that I have. Therefore, I want to use it in the most useful way. I want to impact lives. I want to touch, whether it's business, what am I going to do in all these stages of who I am? We had three stages of who you are, and then we had two stages of other people, and then we had the last two stages in regard to um the completeness and the transcendence. So, with that said, I hope you've enjoyed today's show. Today's show was very heavy. It was very, very heavy. But I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you learned, because this is something that really made me think about myself a lot. And I really want to be able to get to that level and just do me and do me authentically. And I want to become so self aware that I can be able to create that balance and see the goodness that can come out of me and also be of impact. So, with that said, I really, really hope. Woo, I have been talking for 1 hour. Yokabi, how do you do this? With that said, please do not forget to follow us on our social media accounts. If you're watching from YouTube, please subscribe to that. Subscribe to the channel. Even you who's not watching on YouTube, for the Facebook users, go on to Snapchat. Snapchat. You need to go on to YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. Let us get to interact. And with all that, we're going to go into more of these talks. We're going to go into more of these sessions where we're learning more, because I have learned a lot and I want to share this with you as well. And thank you so much for tuning in. For all those who are always here constantly, thank you very, very much. We have Wisdom Wednesdays every Wednesday from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Central European Time, which is 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. East African Time. Normally, I'm joined by Eve, and also you'll be seeing a new face very, very soon. But we're here, and I got this. I got this. Anywho, my loves, thank you so much. Have a great evening. May God bless you wherever you are. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, and stay blessed. Have an amazing one. Goodbye.